Hey there, viewers. Here's something to ponder. Does learning about a celebrity's private life change how you see their work, or do you keep it separate? Share your take in the comments. Today, we're diving into some jaw-dropping revelations. A lawyer just named several high-profile stars that Diddy allegedly slept with. And trust me, you won't see this coming. Let's get into it. Chapter 1. The call that should have never come. I never wanted any part of the Hollywood machine. As a defense attorney, I've always steered clear of high-profile clients, partly out of principle, partly because I've seen how the spotlight can warp a person's sense of right and wrong. My work was honest and unglamorous: small-time criminal cases, corporate disputes, and the occasional civil suit I took on pro bono. I had a modest corner office and a clean record of professional ethics, which I guarded with a near-zealous pride. So when Terri, my assistant, told me someone from Sean Diddy Combs' legal team was on the line, I assumed it was a prank. She insisted it wasn't. That day's sunlight streamed through the blinds, painting stripes across my cluttered desk. The phone receiver felt heavier than usual as I picked it up. The man on the other end had a voice like slick oil, calm, almost friendly. He said Diddy's team was in the midst of serious allegations and needed immediate legal assistance from someone discreet. At first, I was too baffled to respond. Of all the lawyers in this city, why me? He explained that my reputation for integrity was exactly the reason they'd singled me out. They needed someone whose image was squeaky clean, someone who wouldn't draw suspicion if they happened to make certain problems go away. That phrasing rattled me. Problems? What problems? He danced around specifics, offering a compensation package so large it bordered on obscene. I felt a prickle of unease but stood my ground, politely declining. I didn't want to represent a celebrity who might be swimming in scandal, no matter how big the retainer. A moment of silence, then the man's voice lowered, becoming ice cold. "Refusal might not be an option," he said softly. "We respect you, counselor. We wouldn't want that respect to be misplaced." I felt my breath hitch. It was a threat, plain and simple, couched in politeness. Still, I told him no. He paused, maybe to let his words sink in, then ended the call. I tried to brush it off as just another overbearing celebrity rep. The rest of my day was a churn of depositions and scheduling, but a pit of anxiety lodged itself in my gut. I couldn't concentrate. By the time evening rolled around, Terri had gone home and I stayed late to catch up on paperwork. Around 9 o'clock, I heard a knock at my office door, soft but insistent. I figured Terri might have returned, or the cleaning staff had questions. But the hallway was deserted, the overhead lights flickering. My office door was slightly open, which was odd because I'd locked it earlier. Cautiously, I stepped inside. The place was a mess. Drawers pulled out, files scattered. My heart thudded. At first glance, I assumed it was a burglary, but then I saw something absurd. An unmarked envelope, thick with cash, sitting squarely on my desk. My name was typed on the front, note attached. It was all too methodical, too obvious. Someone had broken in, rummaged through my office, and left what looked like a bribe. I felt a rush of anger and fear. Anger at the intrusion, and fear at the lengths these people would go. I called Terri to see if she'd come back or noticed anything. She answered on the first ring, sounding breathless. Without letting me get a word in, she said she was quitting immediately, no explanation, then hung up. I stood there with the phone still pressed to my ear, too stunned to move. In our time working together, Terri had always been diligent and calm. Something had spooked her, bad. I dialed the police next. 2 officers arrived, took a cursory look, jotted down notes, and left after I told them Diddy's name had been mentioned. They seemed uncomfortable, as though poking around a celebrity's business was the last thing they wanted. I hardly slept that night, pacing my living room while replaying every detail of the call and break-in. By morning, I was operating on fumes. I decided to keep the envelope of cash as evidence, locking it in a cabinet in my office. My professional instincts screamed to keep a paper trail, a record of these intimidation tactics. The day didn't improve. Word spread that Terri had bailed for reasons unknown. A few of my long-term clients canceled our upcoming meetings without warning, claiming they were switching to different firms. I had an unsettling suspicion that someone was already pulling strings to sabotage my practice. Before lunch, I got a call from a local reporter, a man I'd dealt with on small legal stories, asking if it was true I was representing Diddy. I denied it, but he just chuckled and said, "Rumor has it you're about to land the biggest case of your life." Then he hung up. Clearly, the bribe and the threat were only step one. Now they were tarnishing my reputation by spreading rumors in the legal community and the press. It felt like a systematic push. First the carrot, the envelope of cash, then the subtle smear campaign. My phone kept buzzing with questions, speculation, half-threats. By mid-afternoon, I felt cornered. Whoever was behind this was determined to strong-arm me into compliance, or ruin me. That evening, I dug up an old contact, Sam Bennett, a once prominent entertainment lawyer who'd vanished from the scene after a major scandal. Rumors said he'd quit because he couldn't stomach the secrets. I emailed him a frantic message, explaining I needed advice on dealing with powerful figures in the industry who wouldn't take no for an answer. To my relief, he replied within an hour. "Let's meet, Old Lantern Bar, 9 p.m. I arrived at the Old Lantern, a dim hole in the wall on the far side of town, hoping to avoid paparazzi or prying eyes. Sam waited in a corner booth, whiskey in hand. He looked older, haunted by secrets. I recounted the last 48 hours, from the cryptic call to the break-in and the unnerving exodus of my clients. Sam listened, occasionally nodding, as though none of it surprised him. "Hollywood is bigger than you think," he said. "It's not just about actors or rappers. It's about entire networks of money and influence. If Diddy wants you on board, there's a reason. They need someone with a squeaky clean record to sign off on hush agreements, bury allegations, or threaten opponents." He paused, swirling the whiskey in his glass. "They'll try bribing you, then threatening you, then destroying your livelihood if you resist. They're probably already discrediting you among your peers." I nodded, gloom settling in my chest. "Why me specifically?" "I'm nobody special." Sam shrugged. "Because you're credible. You're not one of those slick Hollywood attorneys on speed dial. When you stand in court or sign a legal document, people believe you." Then he slid a small envelope across the table. "Inside is a flash drive. Don't ask how I got it, just know it's about Diddy. Serious allegations, NDAs, hush money. Enough to ruin him and maybe others if it went public." He said, "Look at this drive carefully, then decide how deep you want to go. But be warned, once you see what's on there, you can't unsee it." He downed the rest of his whiskey, stood to leave, and added, "Try not to end up like me, burdened by secrets you can never talk about." I left the bar feeling both dread and an odd curiosity. Curiosity about what could be so damning that Diddy's team was frantic enough to target someone like me. As I drove home, I mentally rehearsed how I might extricate myself from this mess, but by the time I got there, exhaustion pinned me down. I fell into a restless sleep on my couch, my mind swirling with half-formed visions of sealed NDAs and wads of cash. The next morning, a quiet desperation settled in. My assistant had vanished, my clients were jumping ship, and the police had shrugged off the break-in. Already I sensed the invisible reach of Diddy's circle tugging at my professional and personal life. Part of me screamed to run, to toss the flash drive into the nearest dumpster and pretend none of this was happening. But another part of me, the one that became a lawyer for the sake of justice, burned with indignation. So I opened my laptop and plugged in the flash drive. If I was in danger anyway, I needed to understand exactly why. Chapter 2. The Whisper Network and a List That Shouldn't Exist. The first thing I saw on the flash drive was a tangled folder structure of contracts, NDAs, and scanned documents. Each file had an innocuous title, like Event_2009 or Retreat_2015, but a deeper look revealed they were far from harmless. They contained disturbing clues about parties funded by Diddy's circle, hush money payouts to unnamed recipients, and references to major. I spent hours parsing the documents. My heart beat a constant drum in my ears. Names popped up in fleeting mentions: Usher, Justin Bieber, Jay-Z, Beyoncé, even the occasional Hollywood actor or actress. Sometimes their presence was only implied, personal assistants describing trips or gatherings they facilitated. Other times, the NDA spelled out the terms: hush money in exchange for silence about activities that ranged from consensual but scandalous to borderline criminal. I realized why Sam had called this a curse. The more I read, the more I felt I was peering into a dark secret shared by people far more powerful than I had imagined. It was a currency of silence, with NDAs acting like legally sanctioned muzzles, and at the center was Diddy, orchestrating the deals or at least benefiting from them. I needed context, so I looked up the only real friend in media I still trusted, Candace, a journalist who had worked on local corruption stories with me years ago. She was relentless, thorough, and not easily intimidated. We met at a late-night diner. She wore an old hoodie pulled tight around her face, scanning the place as if she too expected watchers. "You sound different on the phone," she said as we sat. "Edgy." "What's going on?" I slid a folder across the table, redacted printouts of a few NDAs. "I can't show you everything yet, but this is tied to Diddy and possibly bigger names. We're talking hush money, intimidation, maybe worse. People are shutting me down because they think I'm about to blow this open." Candace flipped through the pages, her lips tightening. "I've heard similar rumors for years. Celebrities forced into NDAs after questionable nights, hush money paid to keep incidents off the record, but I've never seen legit documentation." She pointed to one contract referencing a party house in Miami. "I tried to do a piece on this 2 years ago. My editor killed it after legal threats. No one wanted to touch it." "So what do I do?" I asked, feeling a swirl of desperation. "I'm no journalist. I can't exactly publish an exposé, and the cops don't care. If I go to them, they'll file it under celebrity drama and move on." Candace pursed her lips. "Get more evidence, solid, indisputable proof. Then we leak it to multiple outlets at once so no single publisher can bury it. But I'm warning you, that's a high-stakes move." I sighed. I'm already feeling the pressure. My assistant fled, my clients are deserting me, and I found an envelope of cash that basically screams, "Take the bribe or else." Candace tilted her head thoughtfully. "If they're hitting you this hard, it means you have something they're really scared of. Keep going, you might be onto a bombshell." When I left the diner, a strange combination of hope and dread knotted my stomach. Candace didn't dismiss me as paranoid, she believed me. But she'd basically told me to jump into the lion's den, gather more evidence, connect the dots, and prepare for a mass leak. That night, I dug deeper into the flash drive, cross-referencing NDA details with open-source data. If an NDA mentioned a date or place, I looked up news reports, social media check-ins, paparazzi snapshots. A pattern emerged. Certain high-profile individuals consistently attended Diddy's private events, then suddenly distanced themselves months or years later. Usher's name appeared repeatedly in older documents, then vanished, as if someone carefully removed it from more recent references. A creeping sense of dread took hold. This wasn't just about wild parties. It looked like a system designed to compromise celebrities, either with scandalous footage or drug-laced escapades, then hold that over them for leverage. The hush money kept them compliant. Sometime around 2 a.m., my phone buzzed with an unknown number. I answered cautiously, half expecting more intimidation. Instead, a voice whispered, "You're not safe. They think you have the list. Watch your back." Then the line went dead. I stared at my phone, that single statement echoing in my mind. The list. a rumored document that allegedly cataloged everyone who had ever been compromised at these events. If the fragments on the flash drive were any indication, such a list would be a nuclear weapon capable of blackmailing half of Hollywood. I collapsed onto my couch, the weight of what I was holding crushing me. I was a small-time defense attorney, out of my depth in a storm that spanned entire industries. The following morning, I dragged myself to the office, exhausted but determined. I found the door slightly ajar. Again, my heart sank, expecting another break-in. Inside, things seemed untouched except for a single piece of paper pinned to my desk. Walk away. No signature, no explanation. That's when a stranger cleared his throat behind me. I spun around to see a man in a well-tailored suit, mid-40s, leaning in the doorway. "Apologies," he said calmly. "The door was open. I'm from a firm that represents certain celebrity clients. I'd like to talk." I recognized his name badge from an elite law firm known to handle many of Hollywood's biggest controversies. My chest tightened. "I'm not interested," I snapped. He shrugged. "I'm only here to point out that your continued involvement could be detrimental to your career. Look around. Your office is dead. You've lost clients. Your assistant's gone. This can all be reversed if you simply stop digging. My clients are prepared to help you rebuild. Quietly, of course." My hands clenched into fists. I saw the carrot and the stick. They'd sabotage me, or they'd revive my career if I fell in line. It was exactly as Sam had warned. "Get out," I said, fighting to steady my voice. "I'm not for sale." The man's gaze hardened. "That's unfortunate. I hope you reconsider before it's too late." Then he left. I sat there for a long time, my heart hammering in my chest, the lonely quiet of the office pressing down on me. I realized this was their second wave. After direct intimidation, they offered to salvage my career if I played ball. And as horrifying as it was, it made me even more certain that I couldn't back down. Later that day, I called Sam again. We agreed to meet at a public park where we could talk without being overheard as easily. Over the sound of children laughing and cars humming in the distance, Sam confirmed rumors about the list, an ultimate ledger of people at Diddy's parties cross-referenced with video footage or personal dirt. It was hush money on steroids. He then told me he believed the data I held on the flash drive was only partial. Someone else had the master file. "How do I find it?" I asked, voice low. Sam just shook his head. "Maybe you don't. Nobody knows who holds the complete version, or if it's even in one place. But trust me, it exists. People have died over it or disappeared. If you're chasing it, you need protection." I asked if he could help me contact law enforcement at a higher level. He paused, as if weighing a heavy decision, then gave me a phone number. "Cheryl. She's with the FBI. Tell her Sam sent you, but she won't jump on hearsay. You'll need to show her something solid." By the time I left the park, the sky was dimming into twilight, and a swarm of conflicting emotions buzzed in my head. I felt both terrified and resolute. They had put me in a corner, but that also meant I had nothing left to lose. If I had to take on a labyrinth of celebrity power and hush money, I'd do it on my own term. And so I left the park, one thought resonating with eerie clarity. I had only begun to uncover the magnitude of corruption. One day, this list could either exonerate me by exposing the truth, or swallow me whole. Chapter 3. The Power Players and the Unspoken Rules. The next morning, I dialed the number Sam had given me. An automated message routed me to an FBI switchboard where I left a cryptic message. "My name is Sam Bennett, told me to call you. I have evidence of widespread hush money in Hollywood. Please contact me." I had no idea if it would reach the right person or if it would do any good, but I had to try. I spent the rest of the day fortifying my digital and physical security. I updated locks, installed a camera outside my office, and encrypted the files on the flash drive. Paranoia? Maybe. Yet something in my gut insisted these measures were necessary. If they wanted me quiet, they might attempt another break-in, or worse. That evening I got a call back. "This is Special Agent Cheryl," a woman's voice said briskly. "Sam Bennett mentioned your situation. I can spare 15 minutes tomorrow at 10 a.m. We'll meet at the Federal Building downtown. Check in at the front desk." Her tone offered no reassurance or warmth. She sounded like someone used to dealing with wild claims. Still, it was a foot in the door. The next day I arrived early, stomach churning. After the usual security checks, I was led to a small interview room. Cheryl was in her 40s, sharply dressed, and carried an air of controlled skepticism. I handed over select pages from the NDAs, redacted to protect my sources, but enough to show a pattern of hush money. Cheryl flipped through them, her expression unreadable. "You're telling me these documents implicate multiple celebrities and potentially individuals with deeper ties? And that Diddy's team is strong-arming you to keep quiet?" I nodded. "There's more. A rumored list that can blackmail half of Hollywood. I have reason to believe it's real, and that the people controlling it are ready to do anything to prevent exposure." She eyed me carefully. "I won't lie, we get plenty of celebrity scandal tips that go nowhere. If we decide to investigate, we need probable cause of federal crimes, wire fraud, interstate extortion, money laundering. A few NDAs won't cut it." My heart sank a bit. "What about intimidation, threats, break-ins? Isn't that something?" Cheryl sighed. "Threats and break-ins could be local matters, unless they involve crossing state lines or targeting you specifically as a federal witness. Do you have reason to believe these actors or their associates are crossing state lines with illegal intentions?" I hesitated. The events were held in multiple states: New York, Florida, California. The hush money likely traveled across state lines. That might be something. She jotted notes, still looking skeptical. "Look, keep digging. If you find evidence of large-scale financial transactions that point to something bigger, like racketeering or organized conspiracy, call me. Until then, watch your back." She pushed her card across the table. "And keep your phone on. I might have more questions." I left feeling underwhelmed. The FBI was curious but not convinced. They wouldn't swoop in to save me, not without a smoking gun. Walking back to my car, I kept glancing over my shoulder, convinced I was being followed. Whether it was real or not, paranoia latched onto me. Back at my office, I opened the flash drive again. If I was to convince the FBI, I needed more than NDAs. I needed proof of money flowing in suspicious ways, of hush agreements that spanned states. As I sifted through documents, I found references to wire transfers from shell companies, each labeled innocuously. Some amounts were staggering, hundreds of thousands, sometimes millions, paid to individuals who had no obvious connection to the entertainment industry. My pulse sped up. This looked more like money laundering than hush money. If I could piece together a clear trail, the FBI might take me seriously. While researching these shell companies, I got a call from Mark, an old college friend turned investigative reporter. We hadn't talked in ages, but he said he'd heard rumors I was digging into the big one, referencing the hush money scandal. Apparently, word travels fast in the underbelly of media circles. "Be careful," Mark warned. "There's chatter that a lot of money and power are being mobilized to silence leaks. People are getting spooked. If you have proof, you should skip the local press and go straight to national outlets, or even foreign ones. Keep them from shutting you down." I thanked him for the tip, but dread curled in my stomach. Every call like this confirmed I was wandering into quicksand, and yet, the deeper I got, the more determined I became. If they were going to sabotage my life anyway, I might as well reveal the truth. That evening, I decided to meet Candace again, hoping she could verify the shell companies with her connections. We rendezvoused in a cramped cafe on the outskirts of town. Over steaming mugs of coffee, she combed through the documents I'd printed. "These shell companies are registered in Delaware," she said, pointing to the addresses. That's typical for corporations seeking legal anonymity, but it's also a known channel for money laundering if you know what you're doing. She tapped one of the names. I've seen this LLC before. It was linked to a hush payout for a sexual misconduct case involving a TV producer. My throat tightened. So we're looking at organized hush money across multiple industries? She nodded grimly. Yes. If you follow these LLCs, I bet they connect to bigger financial networks. That's your leverage with the FBI. This might qualify as conspiracy or racketeering, but it's also dangerous. If they know you're tracing the money, they'll come for you hard. Outside, the sun dipped below the horizon and anxiety flickered in my chest. I was close to crossing a threshold. If I continued down this path, there was no going back. But I also understood that partial exposure was more dangerous than going all the way. Half measures would just provoke the machine to crush me without revealing the entire truth. Sure enough, the next morning I discovered my office computer had been hacked. Weird messages popped up and files were scrambled or missing. My antivirus software flagged attempts to steal data. Thankfully, I'd kept the crucial files offline on the flash drive, but the breach rattled me. They were escalating again, likely trying to wipe out evidence or find out how much I knew. Frustrated and scared, I left a voicemail for Cheryl, explaining the hacking incident, emphasizing the potential for an organized effort to tamper with evidence. She texted me back, "Log everything. We'll see if it fits a bigger pattern. Be cautious." Another lukewarm response, but at least she was paying attention. By evening, I couldn't bear the tension anymore. I went home, double-locked my doors, and tried to unwind. Then my phone buzzed with a text from Terri, my ex-assistant. It was just a single sentence. "I'm safe, but please don't look for me." My heart sank. She was alive, but she was terrified. Someone must have forced her to vanish. I texted back, but got no reply. That night, I barely slept. In my dreams, I saw glimpses of lavish parties, celebrities dancing in smoky rooms, cameras rolling behind curtains, NDAs stacked like House of Cards towers. I'd never been to such a party, yet the nightmares felt painfully real. People whispered about the list, holding it like a loaded gun. Then, always, I saw the same shadowy figure. Diddy or someone more powerful. I couldn't tell, but in the dream, they turned toward me with a silent command, "Stop or pay the price." I woke in a cold sweat, my heart pounding. Part of me wanted to call Sam or Candace or Mark, someone, to confess my fear. But it was past midnight, and we were all living on borrowed courage. Instead, I poured myself a glass of water, staring at my own reflection in the kitchen window. When had my life become this labyrinth of secrecy and danger? The question haunted me as I returned to bed, forcing myself to close my eyes. I couldn't unravel the entire system alone. The only way forward was to accumulate enough evidence that the FBI or major media outlets had no choice but to act. Otherwise, I was just a solitary voice, easily crushed. It struck me then that I was part of a bigger story. One about how power moves behind closed doors, how it manipulates the law and devours those who step out of line. The next morning, with renewed determination, I sat at my desk and reviewed the shell company documents again. Every piece of evidence, every suspicious wire transfer, every name that cropped up in multiple NDAs could be part of a damning web. If I could link them conclusively, I might have a shot at rattling the system. And so I typed, wrote notes, cross-referenced data, the office lights flickering overhead like a silent metronome. Around noon, I got a call from a private number. I answered cautiously, half expecting more threats, but it was something else entirely. A man speaking in a low, hoarse tone. "I'm a bodyguard for someone close to Diddy," he said. "I know things that can destroy them. If you're serious about exposing this, meet me tonight. I'll text you the location. Come alone." My pulse kicked into overdrive. This might be the break I needed, or a trap. Either way, I couldn't ignore it. I hung up, trembling with a mix of fear and hope. If he was legit, he could fill in the gaps and finally push this into unstoppable territory. But first, I had to survive the meeting. Chapter 4. The Price of Knowing Too Much. The bodyguard chose an abandoned parking structure off Route 19 for our meeting. I arrived at midnight, the concrete pillars looming like silent sentinels in the moonlight. My instincts screamed caution. This could be a setup to eliminate me. But I'd brought along a small recording device tucked in my jacket, and I'd texted Candace the address, telling her to call the police if I didn't check in within the hour. It felt dangerously inadequate, but it was all I had. Through the dim shadows, I spotted a tall, broad-shouldered figure wearing a hood. As I got closer, I saw the glint of sweat on his brow, the tension in his eyes. He looked like a man haunted by secrets. "You're the lawyer," he said, his voice low. "I heard you're poking around. That takes guts." He kept glancing over his shoulder, as if expecting an ambush. "Where are you here?" I asked, keeping a safe distance. "What do you have to tell me?" He inhaled shakily. "I've worked security at Diddy's private events for years. It's not just about sex, drugs, or partying. It's about leverage, hidden cameras, compromised guests. People get high, do things they regret, and it's all on tape. Then hush money changes hands." He paused, swallowing hard. "I've seen people get physically harmed, drugged, heard rumors about others who never came out of those parties alive. One night, a model overdosed, and I was told to help carry her out. I don't know what they did with her afterward." My stomach churned. "You have proof?" He nodded. "I saw the cameras. Signed NDAs myself. They paid me good money to keep quiet. But I can't keep living with this. People need to know the truth." He pulled an envelope from his jacket, handing it to me. "Photos, some notes I made. They're duplicates. The originals are in a safe place." I opened the envelope, flicking through a few grainy pictures of lavish rooms, intoxicated celebrities. One shot showed a famous singer in a compromising position. Another was more chilling. A figure sprawled on a couch, eyes half open, looking barely conscious. My heart pounded with a mix of horror and grim validation. This was the proof the FBI needed. But the moment I tried to thank him, a set of headlights flared in the distance, sweeping across the concrete. My contact tensed. "They must have tracked me," he hissed. "Go, now." The black SUV roared into the structure, tires screeching. 3 men jumped out, guns in hand. My breath seized. Without thinking, I bolted behind a pillar. The bodyguard fired a warning shot, the blast echoing like thunder. The men shouted for him to surrender. Caught in a panic, I crawled along the ground, clutching the envelope. If they caught me, they'd seize the evidence, or worse. The bodyguard exchanged frantic gunfire with the assailants, buying me time. My heart hammered as I reached an exit stairwell. I stumbled down the steps out into a side alley. I didn't stop running until I reached my car. Shaking uncontrollably, I started the engine and peeled out of there, half expecting bullets to rip through my windshield. The night swallowed me as I sped away, adrenaline throbbing in my veins. When I finally got home, I called Candace in a near-hysterical state, telling her what happened. She urged me to come straight to her apartment, which had decent security. I agreed. The entire drive, I watched the rearview mirror, convinced the SUV was tailing me, but no cars appeared. By the time I reached Candace's building, I was pale and sweaty. Inside her living room, I recounted everything in gasps. Candace's eyes widened in horror as she flipped through the photos. "This is huge. You have to bring this to the FBI now, or leak it widely so they can't destroy the evidence." I nodded, still reeling. "What about him, the bodyguard?" "I left him behind." Candace chewed her lip. "He knew the risks. Right now, you have the best shot at exposing this. You can't waste it." We spent hours meticulously scanning the photos, copying them onto secure cloud storage, and transferring them to multiple USB drives. Then Candace started making calls to her journalistic contacts, hinting that we had bombshell evidence on an industry giant. The response was cautious excitement, but we both knew that the moment we tried to publish, the lawsuits and threats would rain down. Around 4 a.m., exhaustion took me. Candace let me crash on her couch. As I dozed off, I recalled the bodyguard's terrified face, the bursts of gunfire, the sense that we were playing with fire. Now, the stakes felt impossibly high. This was no longer just about NDAs and hush money. It was about people who vanished, about potential manslaughter or murder swept under a rug made of cash. The next day, I mustered the courage to call Cheryl at the FBI and relay the overnight horror. She was alarmed. "Gunfire? Did you get a license plate number?" I had to admit I didn't, and she sounded frustrated. "All right, come in. Bring what you have. We need to talk in person." I arrived at the federal building with Candace. Under Cheryl's watchful eye, we laid out the envelope's contents, the pictures, the notes scrawled by the bodyguard. Cheryl's stoic demeanor cracked a bit as she realized we had potential evidence of homicide and interstate conspiracy. "This changes things," she said, flipping through the photos. "But we need more. Names, exact dates, any possible leads on who these victims might be. Right now, these are just pictures of compromised people. We need to connect it to actual crimes and perpetrators." I felt a stab of despair. Even with these explosive images, the FBI wanted more. "We don't even know if the bodyguard is alive," I said quietly. "He mentioned a model who overdosed." "That's a Cheryl nodded. "Any detail helps. If we can find that model or confirm her death, we can open a homicide investigation. Until then, you're vulnerable. They'll come after you. My advice, go somewhere safe. Don't show your face more than necessary, and be prepared to testify if we reach an indictment stage." Walking out of the building, Candace and I were silent. The sun beat down, mocking the gravity of our conversation. I realized we were in too deep, no turning back. If the FBI was about to open a deeper probe, the circle around Diddy and whoever else was involved would know we'd escalated the stakes. My phone buzzed as we reached my car, a text from an unknown number. "You'll regret this." My blood ran cold. Candace peered over my shoulder. "They're onto us already," she muttered. That night, I left town, heading to a motel on the outskirts of another city. Candace stayed behind, determined to keep digging in her archives. We agreed she'd feed me any new info, and I'd keep the FBI updated. It felt like we were forming a ragtag team, ironically overshadowed by the very real fear that we could be silenced at any moment. At the motel, I fumbled for the key, half expecting someone to jump out of the shadows. The tension was unrelenting. Once inside, I locked the door and pushed a dresser against it. A flickering lamp cast sickly yellow light over the dingy walls. That was the price of knowing too much. Living in fear, uprooted from the life I'd built, forced to watch shadows for the threat of a bullet or a kidnapping. In the silence, I checked my phone again, scanning for updates. Nothing new. I scrolled through the photos on the encrypted drive, each image more damning than the last. A part of me raged at the injustice. How many people had been coerced, blackmailed, or even killed to keep these secrets buried? Another part of me recoiled in terror at the unstoppable juggernaut of wealth and power I was challenging. My thoughts drifted to Terri, the bodyguard, even Sam, people who'd skirted the edges of this scandal and suffered for it. Tears of frustration stung my eyes. This wasn't some heroic crusade in a movie. It was messy, dangerous, and real. I had no illusions of riding in on a white horse to fix everything, but I also couldn't walk away, not after seeing those pictures, hearing those confessions. I slept fitfully, dreams merging with nightmares of gunshots, black SUVs, and scribbled NDAs. At dawn, I woke to a call from Candace. She'd uncovered a link between one of the LLCs in the shell company documents and a PR firm used by Diddy. It placed large sums into an offshore account, matching the time frame of the alleged model's overdose. If we could pinpoint an actual victim or medical record, it might prove the existence of a cover-up. The news both excited and terrified me. We were piecing together a puzzle that might send shockwaves through the entertainment industry. And the closer we got to the final picture, the more I sensed a looming confrontation. Chapter 5. The Bodyguard's Confession. I spent the next few days holed up in the motel, coordinating with Candace via encrypted messaging, sending updates to Cheryl whenever we found a tangible lead. I half expected the phone to ring with news that the bodyguard was dead, yet one morning he called out of the blue, sounding exhausted. "You got away," he said, relief coloring his tone. I shook them off too. "Been hiding in a friend's basement. They're hunting me." My chest felt tight. "Thank God you're alive. Look, the FBI wants to talk to you. They need testimony, details, names, places, victims. If you come forward, they can protect you." He let out a short, humorless laugh. "You think the FBI can protect me from this? It's bigger than you realize. Bigger than Diddy. There are people in tech, politics. They use these parties for leverage. You step on the wrong toes, you vanish." A chill ran through me. "Then why even call?" "Because it's time," he said, voice trembling. "I can't keep living like this. Meet me tomorrow at noon, Riverton Park, public place. I'll tell you everything I know." I relayed the conversation to Cheryl. She agreed to have agents in the area, discreetly, in case something went wrong. Then I drove 3 hours to Riverton Park, a sprawling green space with families picnicking and kids playing ball. The bodyguard was seated on a bench by a large fountain, wearing sunglasses and a baseball cap pulled low. He looked up as I approached, sweat beading on his forehead, despite the mild weather. "It's safer here, with people around," he muttered, glancing at a stroller-pushing mother who passed by. "They won't shoot me in front of kids, at least." I settled beside him, heart pounding. "What did you want to tell me?" He took a deep breath, gaze distant. "I joined Diddy's security detail years ago. At first it was just big shows, events, after parties, but gradually I got pulled into the private stuff, real hush-hush. I saw minors at some gatherings, young models from overseas, heard rumors about deals made to keep them quiet or to keep them from running to the press. Drugs were everywhere. Cameras were hidden in bedrooms, bathrooms. Nothing happened without it being recorded." My stomach flipped. "Did you see him or his associates blackmail these celebrities directly?" He nodded. "Yes, but not in a straightforward way. It was more like, 'Oh, we have footage of you doing lines of coke with underage girls. Sign this NDA or we leak it.' You don't need to say the word blackmail when the threat is obvious. Some celebrities complied out of sheer terror. Others got hush money." I thought of the shell companies, the suspicious wire transfers. Everything matched his story. What about the rumored overdoses, even possible murders? His face went pale. "I can't confirm murder, but I know at least 2 incidents where someone OD'd and died. They were taken off-site, hush payments made to their families. The deaths were reported in different cities to muddy the timeline, none of it traced back to Diddy or these parties. But that's how far they'd go, cover up a death like it was nothing." Rage and nausea churned inside me. "We have to go to the FBI together. Now." He swallowed, looking around nervously. "I want to, but I'm scared. These people have eyes everywhere. If the FBI can't guarantee my safety, I might be signing my death warrant." I checked my phone. Cheryl had texted me that she was in position. "Agents are nearby. We can walk out of here, get into a car and head straight to a safe location. You'll be protected." He hesitated, conflict raging behind his eyes. Then he nodded. "All right, let's do it." We stood to leave, but a scream cut through the air before we took 2 steps. A man in a hoodie lunged at the bodyguard with a knife. I reacted on pure adrenaline, trying to shove him away. The bodyguard twisted, the knife slicing into his forearm. Chaos erupted, children shrieking, parents scrambling to shield them. I heard someone yell, "Gun!" and realized an undercover FBI agent was drawing his weapon. The attacker darted off, weaving through the panicked crowd. The FBI agent dashed after him. I crouched beside the bodyguard, who clutched his bleeding arm. "You all right?" I gasped. He grimaced, pain in his eyes. "Hurts like hell, probably just a cut." Within seconds, more agents arrived, forming a protective circle around us. Paramedics were called. Meanwhile, I watched the families scatter. The day ruined by violence. My mind was a blur of shock and fury. They'd tried to silence him in broad daylight, in front of children. Soon Cheryl appeared, barking orders. The bodyguard was whisked into an ambulance, an agent by his side. Before they closed the doors, he grabbed my hand. "Don't stop," he begged, his voice trembling with both fear and urgency. "They'll never stop if we don't expose everything." Then he was gone, sirens wailing. Cheryl guided me to an unmarked car, her expression grim. "This is official now. Attempted murder of a federal witness. We're going to lock this down. But you understand, this means war." Her words resonated like a thunderclap. War. That was exactly what it felt like. An all-out battle against a fortress of secrets. I nodded, adrenaline pumping, tears stinging my eyes. "He's going to testify, right? Put all this on the record?" "As soon as he's stable, yes," Cheryl confirmed, glancing out the window. "We'll hide him, treat him, prep him as a witness. But the scale of these allegations, it's huge. We'll likely face enormous pushback. From corporate lawyers, influential donors, maybe even inside the system. Are you ready for that?" I exhaled shakily, recalling every threat, every intimidation, every pang of fear. "I have to be," I whispered. "It's gone too far." They took me to a safe house for the night, a drab apartment with bare walls, guarded by 2 agents. I could hardly sleep, mind churning with worst-case scenarios. Once the bodyguard testified, would we see the dam break, or would the powers that be bury the story deeper than ever? In the morning, Cheryl debriefed me. The attacker got away, but they had partial surveillance footage from the park. They suspected a hired thug, possibly a local enforcer. The good news was the bodyguard's wound wasn't life-threatening, and he was recovering under armed protection. "He's agreed to provide a full statement on camera," she said. "This could be a turning point." I felt a flicker of hope, yet I knew how cunning these people could be. One statement might not topple an empire. They'd fight tooth and nail, brand him a liar, produce counter-witnesses. But at least it was a start. When I was allowed to leave the safe house, I found Candace waiting for me, wearing that same hoodie from our diner days. We embraced awkwardly, the weight of everything we'd experienced hanging between us. "Are you okay?" she asked softly. I shrugged, exhaustion etched into my face. Define okay. "I'm alive. That's something." She handed me a sealed folder. I managed to confirm details about a potential overdose victim. A young model named Karina L. died 2 years ago. Her family never got clear answers. This might tie in with the bodyguard's story if we can prove she was at one of Diddy's events. My heart thumped. "You found a record?" Candace nodded. Public obit says she died in a car accident in Nevada, but I dug up a tip that she might have overdosed in Miami. Her father vanished right after her death, presumably paid off. If we can locate him, it could bolster the homicide angle. It was another piece of the puzzle, another lead that could give the FBI the ammunition they needed. "Let's do it," I said. "We might have to travel or track down old addresses, but I'll do whatever it takes." She squeezed my hand. "Careful, every new lead is another risk, but if we pull this off, it might save others from the same fate." We left together, planning our next steps. Even as adrenaline fired me up, a constant undercurrent of fear pulsed through my veins. That park attack had been brazen. The next time, they might not fail. Yet I couldn't walk away. The bodyguard's confession was a plea for justice. The sight of him bleeding on the grass while children screamed remained burned into my mind, a testament to how far these people would go. So I pressed on, guided by a single truth. Knowledge was no longer just power, it was a duty. By knowing these secrets, I had the responsibility to expose them, no matter the cost. And that cost, I feared, was rising every hour. Chapter 6. The list leaks, and the industry shudders. A week passed in a blur of covert meetings, data cross-referencing, and hushed phone calls with Cheryl. The FBI had quietly begun deposing the bodyguard, whose testimony corroborated much of the flash drive's content. Names, places, hush money sums. Still, the case was delicate. Any leak before they were ready could trigger an avalanche of lawsuits and potentially put the bodyguard in more danger. Unfortunately, the story broke early. A smaller news outlet that Candace had teased the information to took a gamble and published partial details of the hush money network. They avoided listing all the big names but mentioned Diddy, Usher, and a few lesser celebrities by initials. The headline read, "Hollywood Hush Scandal. Alleged NDAs tie big-name artists to secret payoffs." I found out while checking my phone in a convenience store parking lot. Within minutes, the story was picked up on social media, and hashtags like Diddy leaks and Hollywood cover-up began trending. The reaction was immediate: confusion, outrage, and an onslaught of denials. I scrolled through my phone, seeing celebrities' publicists issuing statements ranging from vehement denial to no comment. Diddy's team called it a baseless conspiracy theory. Usher's rep refused interviews altogether. My phone rang off the hook. Media requests, old clients who recognized my name in the rumor mill, random strangers claiming insider knowledge. One call was from a major law firm that had threatened me before. They left a voicemail: "We know you're behind this. Expect legal action." My hands shook as I replayed it, a nauseating mix of fear and grim satisfaction. Let them try to sue me for telling the truth. Candace and I agreed to meet at my office, despite the risk. We found a small cluster of paparazzi outside, cameras clicking. This was new. My rundown building had never seen that kind of attention. We ducked inside. I quickly locked the door as reporters shouted questions through the glass. "Guess we're news," Candace muttered, setting down her laptop bag. "Any word from the FBI?" I checked my messages. Cheryl texted me, "Leak complicates our case. We need you in protective custody." Great. Now the feds think I jumped the gun. Candace paced my cramped waiting area. "We didn't leak it directly. One of our contact outlets must have jumped the embargo. Now the narrative is out there, half-baked. The big question is whether we escalate or hide." I sank into a chair, images of black SUVs flashing in my mind. We escalate. If we hide, they'll pick us off or bury the story with legal threats. The best defense is a full offense. Throw every piece of evidence into the public domain so they can't contain it. That was the theory behind large-scale whistleblowing. Once the information was too widespread, no single lawsuit or threat could silence it. Yet I worried about the bodyguard's safety. The FBI was already protective. If we dumped everything now, we might blow his cover. As if on cue, the phone buzzed. Cheryl again. "Stay put," she said flatly. "I'm sending a team to escort you to a secure location. We have reason to believe the leak has triggered intense blowback from Diddy's associates, and possibly beyond." Candace and I exchanged a worried glance. "We'll wait here," I told Cheryl, "but we have paparazzi swarming outside, so your team might want to come discreetly." The next hour was a nerve-wracking wait. More news segments popped up, referencing mysterious legal documents tying major stars to hush money. One pundit argued that NDAs were common and not necessarily indicative of wrongdoing. Another pointed out that hush money was a red flag for deeper secrets. The debate flickered across every channel, fueling speculation. Then came a banging on my door, loud and forceful. I peered through the peephole. Men in suits, not paparazzi. My stomach clenched. FBI? I called out. A voice barked, "Open up!" But something in his tone felt off. I dialed Cheryl instead of opening the door. She picked up. "You at my office?" I whispered. "Not yet," she said. "We're 5 minutes away." My blood ran cold. Whoever was outside wasn't the FBI. Candace looked at me, alarmed. I motioned for her to be silent. The men pounded again, threatening to break it down. The door rattled under their fists. My heart thumped wildly. Were these private enforcers, or something worse? Suddenly, a swirl of confusion. The paparazzi outside began shouting. Through the window, I glimpsed them filming as a black SUV pulled up with tinted windows. The men at my door cursed. I heard them rush outside, possibly to handle the intrusion. I took advantage of the distraction to slip out a side entrance with Candace. We sprinted down a back alley, hearts pounding. Within minutes, we heard sirens. 2 dark sedans with tinted windows screeched to a stop. My first thought was more of them, but then I spotted a woman stepping out in an FBI windbreaker. Cheryl. Relief flooded me as she ushered us into a car. "They were about to storm my office," I said, breathless. Cheryl nodded grimly. "We intercepted chatter that an extraction team was en route, presumably to retrieve or destroy your documents. You're lucky we got here first." Candace and I sank into the back seat, rattled but alive. The car pulled away, weaving through city streets as sirens wailed behind us. My phone pinged non-stop with notifications, news updates, frantic texts from colleagues, demands for interviews. In less than a day, the entire entertainment industry was reeling from the partial leak, with everyone scrambling to control the narrative. In the safe confines of an FBI conference room, we briefed Cheryl on what we had and enough documents to confirm the partial leaks. She asked for permission to cross-section it with the bodyguard's testimony. We agreed. The plan was to eventually hold a press conference revealing a multi-agency investigation, but that required a measure of secrecy. "The leak means we're out in the open," Cheryl said. "If you have more files, now is the time to place them in federal custody. We'll keep them secure, and when we go public, it'll be on official terms." Candace cast me a questioning look. Do we trust them with everything? There's a risk of internal sabotage. That's not paranoia, it's just how powerful these people are. I felt torn. On one hand, handing everything over to the FBI gave us the best shot at a legitimate crackdown. On the other hand, I feared even the FBI could be influenced at high levels, especially if, as the bodyguard said, the corruption reached beyond Hollywood. Ultimately, we decided to do both. I handed over the full set of documents to Cheryl for the official investigation, but Candace also uploaded a secure digital cache to a whistleblower platform that could mass alarm it if something happened to us or to the FBI's case. Insurance, in case powerful hands tried to smother the story. Over the next 2 days, the entertainment industry went into full meltdown mode. Celebrity representatives scrambled to deny involvement or threatened defamation suits against the outlets that had reported on the leak. Social media was awash with conspiracy theories, with fans polarized, some calling for justice, others claiming it was all lies. Diddy's team took a ferocious stance, labeling the leaks an orchestrated attack by disgruntled individuals seeking fame. They filed lawsuits against unknown defendants, effectively a shot in the dark that might land on anyone who dared share more documents. High-profile lawyers were on every news channel, pontificating about NDAs and privacy rights. The FBI, for its part, maintained official silence, though rumors circulated that a grand jury might be convening. Meanwhile, Candace and I laid low in a temporary safe house. Every hour, new updates or threats arrived, but we were in a holding pattern, waiting for the next inevitable shockwave. That shockwave came faster than expected. Late one night, Cheryl called, her voice tense. "We've got a problem. A key witness is missing." My stomach did a flip. I knew she meant the bodyguard, who'd been under guard at a private facility. He disappeared after a security lapse. We don't know if he was taken or if he fled. The news hit me like a punch. He was the linchpin, the one who could testify firsthand that these events weren't just rumor. "Is there any trace of him?" I asked shakily. "Nothing. We're scrambling. If he's been abducted, we have to assume the worst. If he ran on his own, it might be because he felt the net tightening. Either way, it jeopardizes the entire case." As fear constricted my chest, Candace placed a comforting hand on my shoulder. We realized the precarious nature of everything we'd done. A single missing witness could destabilize the entire operation. For a moment, despair washed over me. How could we expose a machine this massive, with unlimited resources, if they could disappear the only man brave enough to talk? Yet the public was on edge. The partial leaks had cracked the facade, stirring a hunger for truth. If the bodyguard reappeared or more evidence surfaced, the scandal could explode. If he remained missing, we risked the public assuming it was all baseless gossip. The industry, already shuddering, might regroup and bury the story under a mountain of denials and lawsuits. I looked at Candace, eyes burning with resolve. "Then we keep going. We can't rely on a single witness. We have documents, we have the shell company finances, we have the partial testimonies. We push forward." She nodded, tight-lipped. "Agreed. We keep our insurance policy. If we vanish tomorrow, everything we know goes live. The world will see it." Together, we braced for the next round, aware that we'd stepped onto a battlefield far beyond our original intentions. Chapter 7. The Missing Witness and the Last Name on the List. A suffocating sense of dread settled over me in the days following the bodyguard's disappearance. I kept replaying the moment he'd grasped my hand in the ambulance, begging me not to stop. Now he was gone. Cheryl had her agents scouring every lead, but dead ends piled up. That only deepened my conviction that powerful forces were at play, people with the clout to infiltrate or outmaneuver federal protection. Candace and I doubled our efforts, determined to find a substitute crack in the wall. Late one night, holed up in the safe house, we pored over the data from the shell companies again. That's when we noticed a strange gap in one of the event timelines. A 2019 LA mansion party. The flash drive mentioned it several times, but certain pages referencing a high-profile mystery guest were heavily redacted. It reminded me of Sam's cryptic warning about a name so big it had been scrubbed from all records. Up to now, we'd assumed Diddy was the top dog, but the bodyguard had hinted otherwise. He'd said, "It's bigger than you realize. People in tech, politics." Could someone else overshadow even Diddy? We scoured gossip sites for mentions of that 2019 mansion party, cross-referenced them with paparazzi shots. Oddly, the tabloids who usually sniff out star-studded events had suspiciously little coverage, just a few mention of B-list actors. Yet a few bloggers hinted that someone mega-influential was present, no names given. Candace checked corporate flight records for that date, focusing on private jets arriving in LA. She found one anomaly, a jet registered to a major tech conglomerate with rumored ties to government contracts. The plane arrived the night of the party and departed early the next morning. That same conglomerate was known for philanthropic endeavors and boasted a CEO with near-mythic status. My spine prickled. Could this be the missing piece? If that CEO, someone who regularly hobnobbed with political elites, was at Diddy's party, it might explain the intense secrecy. The bigger the power, the more thorough the cover-up. We compiled everything we could on the CEO, philanthropic speeches, stock holdings, rumored personal controversies. Nothing conclusive linked him to Diddy's hush money ring, but the absence of any mention raised suspicion. Usually, paparazzi would kill for a shot of him at a celebrity party, but there were none. Almost as if the entire event was sanitized from the media. Suddenly, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "You're too close. Stop." My pulse soared. I showed Candace. "They're watching us," I muttered. She nodded grimly. This was a direct threat, presumably about the mysterious tech mogul. If we were right, unveiling his name could shake not just Hollywood but finance, politics, global relations, the entire system the bodyguard hinted at. Yet we had no direct proof. Without a smoking gun that placed him at the party, we risked a defamation suit from one of the most powerful people on the planet. But the puzzle pieces felt undeniable. The redacted references, the suspicious jet arrival, the absence of any tabloid trace. The next day, an envelope arrived at the safe house's mailbox. No return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper with the words, "Find the final name before they find you." No signature. It echoed exactly what the bodyguard had told me before. Someone else knew about this final name, and they wanted me to uncover it. Or they wanted to push me into a confrontation that might get me killed. I updated Cheryl, who only grew more anxious. She confirmed that the FBI had rung up multiple times at the tech mogul's corporate office about unrelated issues in the past and had always been stonewalled. "If he's involved, we're dealing with a fortress of lawyers and political connections," she said. "We'd need bulletproof evidence or a direct witness." Without the bodyguard, that witness angle was gone. So Candace and I set our sights on verifying flight logs, caretaker statements, anything that might place the mogul at the 2019 party. We got lucky with a lead from a part-time chauffeur who posted anonymously online about driving some big shot to a mansion in Bel Air around that date. But online rumors weren't enough in court. As we dug deeper, calls and messages from unknown numbers increased, threatening me to forget the last name or enjoy your last days of freedom. I felt my sanity fraying. Even with FBI oversight, I jumped at every car door slam, every footstep in the hallway. If this mogul truly had global influence, orchestrating my disappearance would be child's play for him. One evening, Sam Bennett re-emerged, calling me from a burner phone. "I heard rumors you're zeroing in on the real power behind Diddy," he said, his voice fraught. "Be careful. This mogul's name has surfaced in other hush deals that never saw the light of day. He invests in major media outlets. He can kill stories before they're published. He bankrolls politicians. He can pressure law enforcement. You're up against a giant." I asked if Sam had anything concrete. "Nothing that would stand in court," he said bitterly. "But I do know he was at that LA mansion party. Some colleagues of mine were paid to ensure no record existed of him being there. They even forced staff to sign NDAs, threatening them with financial ruin if they breathed a word." All roads led back to the same conclusion. The last name was this tech mogul, but how to confirm it in a way that would hold up legally, in a way that the public would believe even when his empire inevitably launched a counterattack. At that moment, I received a chilling text from a new, unknown number. "He's unstoppable. Quit now or you'll vanish like the rest." That sealed it. If we let fear win, we'd be complicit. We had to push onward. We prepared for the possibility of going fully public, naming him, forging a link to the hush money, and risking immediate backlash. But Candace insisted we needed one last piece of evidence. "A photo, a flight manifest with his signature, anything," she pressed. With the help of Mark, my investigative reporter friend, we reached out to international freelancers who sometimes purchased airport security logs. An unethical practice, yes, but if it's the only way to confirm a flight manifest existed, it might be our shot. We got word that a partial flight manifest for the relevant night might be floating around on the dark web. Mark tried to track it down. Days ticked by with no sign of the bodyguard, no new contact from him. My nerves stretched taut. Then, one night, Mark called me at 3 in the morning, voice shaking with excitement. "I got it," he said. "A snippet of the passenger list for that flight from New York to LA in 2019. The mogul's name is there, plus 2 unknown individuals. That plane took off at 3 p.m., landed at 6 p.m. local time, the same day as the mansion party. It left LA at dawn. I can't prove he went straight to Diddy's event, but it's a damn strong link." I exhaled, relief and fear mingling. That might be enough for the FBI to investigate, if it's real. Mark hesitated. "It looks genuine, but it's not official. Could be dismissed as a forgery. People fake these documents all the time." Still, it was the best lead we had. The next morning, Candace, Mark, and I handed the flight manifest to Cheryl. She took it quietly, scanning every line. "This is something," she admitted. "We'll see if we can cross records with customs or local FBO logs. But be prepared. This mogul will deny everything, and he has the resources to flood the narrative with false leads." By now, the media swirl around the hush money scandal had reached fever pitch. Even the rumor of a bigger name behind Diddy was swirling on social media. Conspiracy theories flourished, some naming random billionaires, others speculating about political figures. But no mainstream outlet had yet pinned it on the real suspect. For me, it felt like walking a tightrope. If we named him prematurely, we could be discredited or slapped with monstrous lawsuits. If we waited, we risked him making a move to silence us. Every passing hour weighed on me, a silent countdown to the final confrontation. Then, at last, Cheryl contacted me with an urgent tone. "We might have cross-verification. The mogul's staff tried to bury flight logs at a small LA airport. We have them in custody thanks to an insider tip. This is enough for us to open a formal inquiry." My heart pounded. "Does that mean you'll name him publicly?" She hesitated. "Not yet. We'll question him quietly first. If he stonewalls us, we may have no choice but to seek a warrant." The walls were closing in. If the mogul caught wind of the FBI's move, he might strike first. Or maybe we were cornering him. Either way, the tension was suffocating. I dreaded every ring of my phone, every knock at the door. That night, I paced the safe house living room, rechecking the locks. Candace scrolled through social media, reading theories that the final name was about to drop, that the hush scandal was a ticking bomb. At some point, I drifted into a restless sleep on the couch, dreaming of the bodyguard calling my name from a distant hallway, telling me to run. In the morning, I woke to find an envelope shoved under the front door. Inside was a blank piece of paper, except for one line scrawled in pen. "We know where you live." Chills swept through me. They weren't just referencing the safe house. They were reminding me that nowhere was truly safe. The final name was near, and soon everyone involved would have to face the consequences, one way or another. Chapter 8. The Final Choice. I woke up on the day of the storm, my nerves already frayed. The FBI had scheduled a covert interview with the tech mogul for that afternoon, an attempt to confront him with flight logs and hush money evidence. Cheryl believed he might try to bluff or threaten them. If that failed, he could orchestrate some last-ditch tactic to shut the investigation down. Candace and I agreed that if anything happened to the FBI's efforts, if we sensed the case was about to be buried, we'd release the name ourselves. Mark was on standby to blast it across multiple platforms. We also had an automated data drop set to go live if we didn't input a daily code. Insurance. Still, fear gnawed at my guts. The bodyguard was missing, Terri had vanished, Sam was in hiding. This mogul had effortlessly made people disappear. If he discovered the FBI's plan, what might he do? Around midday, a black SUV pulled up to the safe house. My heart leapt into my throat. Had they found me? Then I spotted a familiar face in the driver's seat, Cheryl, out of uniform. She beckoned me over. "Get in. We need to talk." Candace and I climbed in cautiously. Cheryl drove us to a deserted warehouse near the industrial docks, one the FBI sometimes used for undercover operations, she said. As we pulled up, my anxiety skyrocketed. This place, deserted and echoing, felt like a stage set for a final showdown. Inside we found Sam, pale and trembling, along with another man in a hooded jacket. I recognized him instantly, the bodyguard. He was alive but looked haggard, dark circles under his eyes. Relief flooded me. "What, how?" I stammered. "We thought you were taken." He shook his head. "I ran. Agents were compromised. Someone inside the FBI was feeding information back to that mogul's team. I had to disappear. Sam helped me." Cheryl nodded grimly. "I suspected a leak. That's why we're here, off the grid. No official channels. We can't trust everyone." The bodyguard stepped forward, swallowing hard. "I'm ready to testify, but we have a problem. The mogul knows. He's got his own men searching for me. They're on their way here, or so we heard through Sam's contacts." My throat constricted. "Then we need to leave, now." Cheryl closed her eyes. "We can't. The only way to secure your testimony is to record it here, off official premises. Once we have it, we can go public immediately, even if we can't trust every corner of the bureau." Sam handed the bodyguard a small digital recorder. He nodded, took a deep breath, and began. His voice echoed in the cavernous space as he laid out every detail. The parties, the blackmail videos, the hush money, the overdoses, the involvement of the billionaire mogul who funded or facilitated key cover-ups. I felt goosebumps prickle my arms. This was the unfiltered truth. The final piece tying the mogul directly to Diddy's scandal. Halfway through his confession, headlights sliced through the gloom, illuminating the warehouse walls. My heart hammered. "They're here," someone whispered. Cheryl sprang into action, instructing Sam and the bodyguard to hide. Candace and I ducked behind crates. A side door banged open. 3 men in dark suits entered, guns raised. One pointed directly at Cheryl. "You step aside and we'll leave you breathing," he snarled. Cheryl leveled her weapon at them. "Federal agent, drop your weapons now." But the men didn't budge. Tension coiled like a wire about to snap. Then another figure stepped in. Tall, imposing, well-dressed in a tailored suit. My heart lurched as I recognized him from countless news articles. The tech mogul himself. His gaze swept the room, landing on me. A faint sneer curled his lips. "You're the lawyer who's been so troublesome," he said, voice dripping with condescension. "You should have taken the bribe and kept quiet." I swallowed, stepping out from behind the crates. Candace reached for my arm, but I shook her off. "It's over," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "We have your involvement on record. Hiding behind NDAs and hush money won't save you now." His eyes burned with cold fury. "You have no idea how this world works. All the evidence in the world won't matter if I decide it's too dangerous to exist." Cheryl's gun was still trained on his men. "Back off, we have multiple agents outside." The mogul gave a dark chuckle. "I doubt that. My men cleared the perimeter." One of his goons moved towards Cheryl, gun aimed. She fired, the shot echoing in the warehouse. He dropped to the floor with a groan. The other men raised their weapons, but I dove behind a crate, Candace close at my side. Chaos erupted. Gunfire, shouts, footsteps reverberating. Sam scrambled for cover while the bodyguard shielded himself behind metal shelving. The mogul ducked behind a support beam, barking orders. Amid the confusion, I heard the bodyguard's voice ring out. "We're live streaming this. You can't hide now." A flicker of hope lit in my chest. He must have set up a phone or camera to broadcast. If he was telling the truth, everything was being recorded in real time. Gunshots, the mogul's presence, the entire confrontation. That single move might ensure no hush money or intimidation could bury the story. The mogul realized it too. In a fury, he shouted for his men to find the phone, but they were pinned down by Cheryl's gunfire. Bullets ricocheted off metal pillars. I prayed no one would get killed. Then, abruptly, the mogul made a break for the exit. Sam tried to block him, but the mogul shoved him aside, disappearing into the night with at least one bodyguard in tow. In the aftermath, 2 of the mogul's men lay injured, groaning on the concrete floor. Cheryl disarmed them, calling for backup with an untraceable device. The bodyguard emerged, phone in hand, still streaming. His face was pale, adrenaline etched into every line. "You got it on video?" Candace asked breathlessly. He nodded. "Everything. He was here, armed men with him. We have that on camera." He can't deny it. A wave of relief and terror crashed over me. We'd forced the mogul to show his hand publicly, but he'd slipped away. The confrontation was out in the open now, with live footage already bouncing around the internet. No hush money or intimidation campaign could fully contain that. Within the hour, FBI reinforcements arrived. Trusted agents Cheryl had hand-picked. They secured the scene, took statements, and loaded the injured goons into ambulances. Sirens lit the night sky, painting the warehouse in red and blue flashes. Sam and the bodyguard gave immediate on-camera testimonies, ensuring their stories were recorded from multiple angles. Candace uploaded everything to our secure whistleblower platform for a mass release. We'd chosen exposure over survival, and somehow it felt like it might just save us. Any attempt to disappear us now would only confirm the truth of what we'd revealed. Days later, as the dust settled, the mogul was served with federal warrants. He fled the country, or so rumor had it, but the damage was done. The FBI's official press conference confirmed a sprawling investigation into hush money, blackmail, and potential homicide cover-ups. Diddy's legal team scrambled to distance him from the mogul, claiming ignorance. Celebrities reeled, some coming forward to share their experiences under NDAs. The entire industry convulsed as more insiders stepped up, emboldened by the public outcry. For me, life would never be the same. I'd torn down the pillars of my old practice, become a whistleblower, and nearly lost everything in the process. Yet there was a weird sense of peace, knowing we'd forced the system to look at itself, its hypocrisy, its corruption, its monstrous appetite for secrets. One morning I woke in the safe house, sun streaming through the curtains. My phone buzzed with an anonymous text. "This isn't over." I shivered, remembering the final confrontation. The mogul might be gone for now, but his networks remained. Still, I had no regrets. I'd chosen truth, placed it in the public domain, where no hush agreement could bury it. The cost was immeasurable. Lost friendships, destroyed career prospects, a permanent stain of fear. But I'd never forget the bodyguard's trembling voice when he said, "They'll never stop if we don't expose everything." We had exposed it, or at least enough to tear a hole in their armor. Late that afternoon, Cheryl called with an update. The bodyguard was safe in a secure location, set to testify before a grand jury. Sam was cooperating, sharing every bit of knowledge he had from his entertainment lawyer days. Candace's articles were in high demand, multiple publishers competing to run the comprehensive story of the hush money empire. The train had left the station. This time, it wouldn't be derailed. I gazed at my reflection in the mirror, noticing the weight I'd lost, the haunted look in my eyes. The scars of this battle would stay with me, but so would the quiet satisfaction of having done the right thing. For too long, these secrets had flourished in darkness. Now, at least, there was a floodlight shining on them. I stepped outside, inhaling the crisp air, uncertain of my future but strangely unafraid. I'd made my final choice, to stand against the machine, no matter the consequences. Even if threats still lingered, even if the mogul lurked in exile with plans for revenge, the truth was out. And once that truth took root in the public mind, it could never be fully silenced again.